So welcome again to our short series on stewardship and generosity. Hope you've been having a good week. This is the third of our videos. First one, we talked about the principles of stewardship and generosity. The session last time was an attempt to answer that tricky question that we clergy sometimes get asked, which is, how much should I give? Well, as we learned last time, that has a lot of factors that one has to take into account, and the answer is it depends, but it's to do with what's in here. This session is to do with the question, what does my giving go towards? Which is a really fair question. I think people sometimes are reluctant to give towards the church because they fear that their giving is going to, I suppose it's a bit like that bottomless pit effect, you know? If I'm going to give money, I need to be sure that the money that I give makes a difference. My money is hard earned. I don't just want to give money to a church if that money is going to just drip away. I need to know that my hard-earned cash is making an impact. And I think that's an absolutely fair question to ask. So what I want to do in this video today, which will be no more than 10 minutes, is to think a little bit about what your giving goes towards when you give to a church. So a few things to say right off the bat. We as a church here in Kilternan, we are committed to effective stewardship. And we work hard to ensure that we use our resources, the resources that we have, to the best of our ability. And running a church with a busy parish centre like ours is absolutely no small task. And there's lots of people in this parish, some paid, but an awful lot unpaid, who do their best to make sure that our finances are effective. And that's one of the roles of the select vestry, who take on the role of trustees of holding the resources of the parish in trust on behalf of the parish. And that's something that we take seriously. And as a church, we are a charity. And it may feel strange to refer to ourselves as that. Of course, we are a church first, but we are a charitable body. And as such, we are subject to all of the same regulations that any charity is subject to. And in this day and age that we live in, that's incredibly demanding. But it's fine because it simply ensures good practice. So let's look back into this parish last year, which will give us an idea of the kind of things that our giving goes towards and some of the costs that are captured in running a parish like the parish that we run. So in 2022, and all this is available in our annual report and in our audited accounts. 2022, we brought in over 355,000 euros as a church. About a quarter of that comes from what we might call general giving. So what's general giving? Well, that's quite simply what parishioners give. So that comes through things like direct debits, the envelope scheme. Maybe some people give an annual donation, or quite simply the plate that gets passed around church. Over 50% of our income as a church comes from using our assets. And what I mean by that, that's rent in our parish centre, that's the work of the Gathering Grounds Cafe, and that's some of the dividends we get from some of our historic investments as a church. And the rest of our income comes from fundraising, comes from grants, comes from tax reclaim, and maybe just a few small sundries. I think there's a misunderstanding sometimes when it comes to churches. I spoke to someone recently who would be new to the whole life of church, but he had joined our community, and he was asking me, who pays for all of this? And we talked about how it's built on the work of people's generosity, and he was taken aback. He said, I always assumed that there must be some sort of government fund or some centralized fund that runs all this. Now listen, we do get some money for grants, but really it's no more than a drop in the bucket of what it costs to run the parish here. Our growth is contingent upon the generosity of people, the generosity of you. So that's our income. What about our expenditure? Well, Last year, our expenditure amounted to 346,000, or just over. And a big chunk of that, recently, almost a quarter in 2022, has gone into maintenance. And look, and that means care of our buildings. And I know for some people that's incredibly off-putting. I know for some people they want to fund programs. They don't want to feel that they're giving all of this money to the burdensome care of buildings. And I do get that. But part of our role here in Kilternan is the historic charge and responsibility that we have for the buildings that we have inherited. They're entrusted to us. And there's something of legacy, and it's something that we pass on to future generations. But also the centre that we run, we're so blessed to have it. It gives us an opportunity to support the whole community. But of course, there's a piece of work there in making sure our buildings are up to standard and of the quality expected of us. Last year, we also spent a huge amount of money on utilities. About 35,000 euros just for heat and for light. Of course, that's one of the reasons why we want to invest in solar panels, A, to do our bit for the environment, but also to lower some of our bills. But we're struggling in the same way that households are with the increase in the cost of utilities. But, of course, rightly, what we want to do is invest most of our income in ministry and in mission. Every year, around 70,000, a little bit more, is given to what we call our diocesan assessment. Now, part of it funds me as your rector, but don't be alarmed, that isn't what my salary is. Part of it covers my salary, but also part of it is a contribution to the diocese. And that enables us to run programs across the diocese of Dublin and Glendalough. It enables us to fund the likes of a diocesan youth officer and communication officer. But we as a parish, we also fund staff. We have a family and children's ministry coordinator. We have an administrator. We have the staff of the gathering grounds. We have a music coordinator. And until recently, we had a youth worker. And all of our staff in this parish are currently part-time. But they work really hard to make a difference in their area. And we're blessed to have them. Our commitment in recent years as a parish has also been to give 10% of our general giving to charities. There are things that we would love to be able to do as a parish, but we don't have the expertise, the time, or the skills to do them. So taking the principle of the tithe, around 10% of our general giving is given to several charities. Some of those are international charities who maybe work in the area of development. Some of those are local charities, maybe homeless charities who work in the field of domestic violence, for example. That works out for us normally at about 10,000 euros per year. It also enables us to respond. So, for example, it affords us to be responsive with the emerging needs in the Al-Hali hospital in the Gaza. And of course, that doesn't include individual fundraising efforts by parishioners. But of course, running any sort of program comes at a cost. But as a parish, we believe wholeheartedly in what we do. The Gathering Grounds Cafe enables us to support people of all ages from all across our community. And I believe that the level of outreach that we deliver as a parish is really second to none. We provide lots of services to families, and we've been delighted recently to launch an inclusive play program for children who may have additional needs. We have multiple forms of expressions of worship, not just Sunday, but at times throughout the week. And we have 60 people in the last year or two who've signed up for an Alpha course. We've run a mental health initiative and a Ukrainian support program. And that doesn't include the everyday work of pastoral care, bereavement care, occasional services, confirmation classes, etc. The work of this parish never stops. But it genuinely makes a difference. And what does this mean for us in regards to our own sense of generosity, our sense of giving, and our own sense of stewardship? I read this line recently and I liked it. It said this: collaborative, generous communities fosters tremendous kingdom impact. As the early Christians faced the world, they saw immense spiritual and they saw immense physical poverty and distress all around them. And rather than just simply acting as individual givers, what they did is they came together and they sought collective impact with their generosity. And that's the story of the Acts of the Apostles, and it's the story of the church today. Stewardship is not just another word for giving money. Stewardship is genuinely a lifestyle. And as we as a community live lives of generosity, we expand our reach to serve and to support more people and to advance the kingdom of God. And that's what we're called to do in Kilternan. We're not called to run a cushy, nice church for the people who go to Kilternan. We are called to make a difference. We are called to serve our community and advance the kingdom of God. One of the things that I would love to see us do as a parish, for example, is to maybe have a curate to enable us to increase our pastoral care and support for those who are in need. And of course, to do so requires an uplift in our finances. We're very mindful of that. So stewardship is not just a source of income for the church. Stewardship is a way of life for those who are committed to Jesus. Stewardship is not so much about obligation, but it is about obedience and it is about faithfulness. Stewardship, it doesn't start in our lives until it starts here, somewhere in our hearts. And stewardship ultimately begins with God, who is the owner, creator, and redeemer of all things. God bless.